days. The high latency stream, so YouTube, we're starting in about 2 minutes. The high latency stream just started. So you guys should, if you want to see.
This is so good.
Oh yeah, I was just watching the opening of that.
So space pods have been around, I think, since season 2.
You guys already had done.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking of changing their name to like a subspace transmission or something like that.
You remember this?
Oh my God, yeah.
He started cracking up.
So
and he hadn't even started saying anything. So.
All right.
Dude, this extra long cable is gonna seriously trip me out. Or literally trip me up.
Ben, are you recording?
Oh, crap. Yes, I am.
Of course you are.
Hey, you know what's amazing is well, we'll talk about that in After Dark.
Cool.
We got like, what, 1 minute?
1 minute.
Yep.
Everybody ready?
Sure.
Heck yeah. I'm excited.
You're not even talking.
I'm talking right now.
No, you know what I mean.
Words.
That's how we do that.
Thank you.
Is the red light blinking?
I can't tell I'm too short.
Are we actually recording though?
I'm too
Okay.
Falcon short.
Too Falcon short. I can't handle all this Falcon news.
One day on The Good Place, she's going to say Falcon instead of fart. Well, yeah, but did she say what the, was it what the fork?
Yeah, what the fork?
Was it? One day, it's going to happen. I'm going to write a really nice letter.
Shirt balls.
And then it's going to happen.
That's a fun show.
It's a good show. I like that.
Hi, South Africa.
Nobody can hear you. Okay.
No, we muted it. We muted you on purpose.
Yeah, no shit.
Everybody ready?
Sure.
Are you sure?
Yeah, buddy.
Okay.
All right.
Welcome to the conversation. I am Carrie Ann, and I will be your host for this first segment. I am, of course, joined by Jared, our resident astronomer, as well as Mike, our rocket specialist. And behind us, we have Adetta, who will be producing the show today. Today in news, we have...
Dawn continues its mission at Ceres.
And Virgin Galactic gets $1 billion investment.
And then in our second segment, Jared here will be having an interview with author Chris Profit about the future of SpaceX. It's going to be a really interesting one. And then, of course, in our third segment, we get back to your comments and questions about last week's show. But this is tomorrow, Orbit 10.40.
Good morning. How's everything up in the sky?
As at the top of the show, like I always want to do, I give a huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. These are of the Escape Velocity variety. They, of course, get their name in the show at all three segments, access to our exclusive Patreon-only Hangouts, early access to After Dark as soon as it's available on demand, early access to view-only copy of the show rundown, free worldwide swag, worldwide shipping in the swag store, read-only access to Tomorrow Host channel, which is amazing, voting rights to upcoming roundtable discussions, access to our Escape Velocity Discord channel, and so much more. If you are interested in any of these things, I know I'm like the Micro Machine Man, any of these things and anything else really, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. I figure I never actually read all of them, so you know, maybe once a month I'll try to speed through that as quickly as possible.
So what the rewards you actually get.
So many of them, and more to come, of course.
That's a lot.
We're always sort of retooling some of those things. We want to make sure that you feel that you are getting out of the show as much as you are putting into the show. So that's where all of that is coming from. So the very next thing that we usually like to do is talk about launches. And for that, I usually turn to
We
Mike.
didn't have any this week.
And
Yeah,
that's a
we didn't
really
have any
sad
this
panda.
week. Ah.
That's okay, because
But we're gonna have a bunch next week though, so that'll be fun.
exactly. I feel like week over week, we kind of have this sort of thing of like it's feast or famine around here sometimes. So sometimes we make Mike dance for the first 10 minutes of the show, and other times we tell him he can take a break for like a half second. So for those of you wondering, no launches, but that's okay. We will get back to because we are the ones who do the launches, by the way. We will get back to doing that next week. So, Mr. Jared, you are going to be up first.
Yeah.
And you were saying something about series?
Yeah, series. Of course, we're all big fans of dwarf planets
Totally.
here at TMRO. So we got to talk about Dawn, which is currently at Ceres, the largest dwarf planet within the planetary boundary of the solar system at the moment. It's been granted a mission extension.
Oh,
now, it was launched in 2007, and it's the only spacecraft that's actually orbited 2 celestial bodies in the solar system outside of the Earth and Moon system. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So, and it does that because it has ion engine propulsion. And as we always like to note, if you're a big Star Wars fan, TIE Fighter, TIE stands for Twin Ion Engine. Well, Dawn has 3 ion engines on it. So, step up, Galactic Empire. Now, it rendezvoused and it went into orbit around the largest asteroid in the asteroid belt, Vesta, in 2011, and then used its ion engine to leave orbit in 2012 and went on its way to Ceres, which is the largest dwarf planet in the asteroid belt, only dwarf planet in the asteroid belt, actually. And it arrived there in 2015. Now, the data collected by Dawn has actually shown us that Ceres is rife in volatiles like water ice, which potentially makes Ceres an excellent place for us to use as a pit stop on our way to further places out in the solar system, and it might potentially have a subsurface ocean. The jury's kind of still out on that, so we need more data. And the nice thing about that is that this is Dawn's second mission extension, so we're going to get some more data. Now, it was unknown if Dawn would actually be given permission to continue its mission, as 3 of the 4 reaction wheels that control pointing the spacecraft have failed, but the engineers at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory came up with an ingenious solution to balance the attitude of Dawn by using a combination of its hydrazine-fueled reaction control thrusters and its ion drive engines. So Dawn is going to be moving into its closest orbit yet around Ceres. It's only going to be about 200 kilometers above the surface. Its previous closest orbit was only about 385 kilometers above the surface of Ceres. This low orbit should provide increased resolution and resolving power for all of the instruments that Dawn carries. Now, depending on the health of the spacecraft and a report on the remaining fuel on board in 2018, a decision will be made as to whether to extend Dawn's mission for a 3rd time or back out Dawn to an orbit that will allow it to be sort of like a safe graveyard orbit around Ceres. That way we prevent Dawn from crashing into Ceres, potentially contaminating the surface of Ceres, because Dawn was built to certain specifications, but obviously, like many missions we send out, we didn't realize there was going to be so much water ice at Ceres.
Yeah.
And that's something that we don't want to contaminate. And that's not something that we really discovered until we got there. So,
right.
Yeah, it's been a pretty interesting mission. And I love that image of Occultator Crater with the white spots there, which are salt deposits on
I was
the
just going to say,
surface.
there was a question in the chat room from YouTube. Jim Bird said, did we find out what the white blob on Ceres is?
Yes.
So salt, right?
Salt deposits, specifically magnesium sulfate that we think is coming up from under the surface. It comes to the surface, and then because there's no real atmosphere on Ceres, it just kind of goes straight from a liquid to a gas. It just comes out like that. It's literally Epsom salts. So,
nice.
So the same stuff you soak your feet in.
I was just saying, when we get there, we can have nice baths.
Ceres will actually be a spa by the time we call them as a, I
so
suppose.
awesome.
So maybe so.
Ceres spa. I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So.
Oh, there's so many ideas that nobody wants to hear out of my head right now. All right, so thank you, Jared. I appreciate that.
You got that.
Mr. Mike, a company that we haven't actually talked about in a little bit here, Virgin. Specifically, more like it's all a Virgin Group, right? Has got some more funding as of late. Tell me what's going on over there.
Yeah, so we're talking about Virgin Galactic, Virgin Orbit, and the spaceship company. They have gotten a $1 billion investment. Well, I mean, check hasn't been signed yet, but they have pretty much signed up a partnership with the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, the government of Saudi Arabia. So what this partnership is hoping to do is accomplish several things, and is going to make the country, Saudi Arabia, a primary stakeholder in Virgin Galactic and Spaceship Company and Virgin Orbit. So that's all going to be very interesting for sure.
Yeah.
But with this, there is an option to have an additional $480 million of additional funding as well. Now, this was all agreed upon by Prince Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud, who's there on the right. He's the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. And not only that, but he's also the Deputy Prime Minister, the Chairman of the Council of Economic and Developmental Affairs, and of the Chairman of the Public Investment Fund. And, of course, you can see Sir Richard Branson there on the left. Now, Prince Mohammed said that this partnership with Virgin Group will not only help the economy of Saudi Arabia, but the future of Saudi Arabia as well, from an economic, technology, and knowledge standpoint to advance the country. Now, Sir Richard Branson, of course, the founder of Virgin Group, said that he was very happy about this new partnership and reiterated that they would be launching people and satellites into space very soon. He also mentioned that they would push their supersonic transport ambitions as well, which it seems they may have a concept design of now. They at least showed this at a recent conference anyway in Saudi Arabia. Now, the intended investments not only will be able to cover things like this supersonic transportation, and this might be the primary focus of this investment, but it's also going to, if they get the regulatory approval, resort to have, like I said, PIF being the Public Investment Fund having a significant stake in Virgin Galactic. Now, it's not only going to support their human spaceflight plans, but it's also going to accelerate their manufacturing and operational capabilities for Virgin Galactic. And it's also going to develop, or rather help aid in the development of their small satellite launch systems as well. So lots of crazy stuff could be happening. There also is mentions of some sort of development of a space-centric entertainment industry in Saudi Arabia. So who knows what that could look like in the future. But in any case, they're going to be working together for quite some time. And in another piece of exciting news, Virgin Galactic has received an approved launch license from the FAA to operate out of Spaceport America in New Mexico for Spaceship Two. So they could actually be 6 months away this time.
That would be super exciting.
Everything's lining up.
Yeah. Oh, that would be super exciting. That's we poke fun. We poke fun at friends, of course. We're not trying to be too harsh on Virgin. It's just, at any time you say you're about 6 months away and then it's 3 or 4 or 5 years later, it's a little. It becomes funny after a certain point, I suppose.
Spaceships are hard. Yeah.
Dude, space in general, I feel, is just really, really difficult.
It's difficult.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So, normally, I have to point out really quickly, normally, a lot of the things that you talk about, A, I know nothing about, which is great because then I'm learning. At least I'm trying to. But then B, I also can't pronounce them. But I looked at this and I was like, Euclid. There's a street in Anaheim called Euclid.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know if it's named after the acquisition like this mission is. But, it could possibly be it. But we got a little bit of bad news coming from the European Space Agency.
Yeah.
Bad news, but also good news as well at the same time with it, which it seems like when you make a space telescope, you often run into problems and you end up having to delay it because of instruments or something with it. And that's often because a lot of these instruments we're designing for space telescopes, nobody's ever designed anything like it before. So custom one-off, special order, if you will. So it's always pushing the boundaries of what we can do with astronomy. But the European Space Agency's upcoming Euclid dark matter seeking space telescope, it's not an exception to this this rule, it seems, of space telescopes being delayed. So it was originally scheduled to launch in 2020, and the delay is looking to be about 12 months after this. And it's actually related to the instruments that are going to be flown on the telescope, specifically this instrument that we have in view for you right here, which is a near-infrared spectrometer. Problems have arisen when they were taken down to their operational temperatures, as a infrared system has to be significantly colder than the objects you're trying to view in order to actually see them. So Euclid is an awesome mission because it is designed to view 2 billion galaxies simultaneously back as far as 10 billion light years. And it's going to cover roughly 1/3 of what us astronomers call the extragalactic sky. So this is basically the sky that's facing away from the Milky Way. So if you try to look through the Milky Way, obviously the Milky Way kind of blocks your view. So we really like to do super precise studies not looking through the Milky Way, so we look out of the Milky Way. We call that the extragalactic sky. Now, we actually should be able to characterize the interaction of dark matter with regular, what we call baryonic matter, which is what you and I and the computer or whatever you're watching this on are made out of. And we might even be able to crack some of the secrets of dark energy with this as well. And that's because it's got a super wide field of view. It can look at a big patch of the sky all at once, and it's very awesome mission. So, and it's good that they caught this on the ground as opposed to like being out there, because this is going to the Sun Earth Lagrangian point 2.
Very. All right. Good. That's good.
Good that we caught it.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to go for.
Yeah.
Oh goodness, it's just one of those. It's one of those days, apparently.
Yes.
You know, actually, there was a question in the chat room. I don't know if you'll be able to answer from YouTube. Jim Burr, again, how cold are they planning on to get these instruments?
I actually don't know precisely how cold the infrared systems on Euclid are supposed to be. But I can tell you on James Webb, they're going down to 40 Kelvin, which is... That's extremely cold. So yeah, it's that's cold. So very cold because you know.
I mean, yes, it is.
It sounds really silly, but if you want to see something that's at like 45 Kelvin, with an infrared instrument, you need to drop it down to below 45 Kelvin. And that's basically how it works, because you're not going to be able to detect it because your detector itself will be brighter than the object you're trying to look at. So, so it's very important that we make it super cold. So I'm not sure of the exact temperature, but I will tell you, with infrared instruments, it's usually super cold, like double-digit Kelvin temperatures. So, yeah.
Crazy. All right. So I know, Jared, you are going to be conducting an interview with Chris Prophet about SpaceX, about the future of SpaceX.
Yes.
But Mike, about the here and now of SpaceX, you've got a story.
Yeah.
So it sounds like SpaceX and the Air Force are getting cozy, huh?
Yeah, well, the Air Force, of course, has their Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle program, and SpaceX has been, trying to be a part of that, and have been trying to get authorized to launch national security payloads. But so has Orbital ATK, or rather, Orbital ATK is Space Division of Northrop Grumman.
Very good.
A couple of contracts. But okay, back up a couple of months ago, the Air Force put out a couple of contract awards that was giving out money to develop new rocket systems for the EELV program, Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle program. And over this past week, they've given some extended contracts to SpaceX and Orbital ATK. Now, for SpaceX, the contract extension is about $40 million to help develop their Raptor methane engine. And with this, the funding is an extension that they got $33 million originally, and SpaceX agreed to spend about $67 million to jointly fund this program. And this is not the exact Raptor engine that they're going to be using on their big BFR. This is going to be a subscale demo that they're going to use first on the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rockets. Now, back on June 8th of this year, the Air Force added this is actually the second extension. The first extension they did was $16.8 million, and the ceiling at that time was about $95 million that they could invest in this program. Now, aside from the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy demos, of course, this is going to carry right on over to the BFR program as well. So everything that they're able to learn from this is going to apply towards that program. But not only is it going to work for that, but if SpaceX and the Air Force have some sort of program where they want to keep that subscale demo, that might be a part of the EELV program. And this all, of course, is to get away from the dependence on the Russian RD-180 engines used on United Launch Alliance's Atlas 5.
Right.
And the Raptor isn't under considerment as a replacement for that. It's just that the Air Force wants as many options as they can. Now, SpaceX is, of course, going to be performing their work for this program at its headquarters in Hawthorne, California. They're also going to be doing some testing at the NASA Stennis Space Center in Mississippi and, of course, at the Los Angeles Air Force Base. But let's talk about Orbital ATK for a minute. The Air Force has awarded them an additional $20 million for advanced rocket technology and solid boost technology. Now, this is it's kind of a weird contract. It's an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. It's like a hybrid cost plus but fixed fee and fixed firm price contract. I know that sounds confusing, but it's a little bit of both. If there are overruns, they could add more money, but they want this, if they can, to be an affordable fixed price contract. But what it is it's going to be doing research at the Air Force Research Laboratory, working on aerospace systems and rocket propulsion division, and they're looking at more solid rocket motors to address, their next generation strategic, tactical, and spacecraft propulsion systems. And it sounds to me that this is more likely going to be for some of Orbital ATK's smaller military applications like missiles, but most likely it could also be to develop another ICBM to enhance or replace the aging fleet of ICBMs that, Orbital ATK supplies under the Minuteman program or even the Polaris rockets. So anyway, there's one other thing that they're working on that could be a part of the ELV program, the next generation launcher that Orbital ATK has been working on and has been getting funding from the Air Force for. Either way, it sounds like that this is really good for both companies and that it's going to be beneficial for the Air Force, too. And there could be some really exciting space projects that result from this. So I know it's just a contract and just money being passed around, but I'm excited for what it could bring.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Gosh, I just saw it and now I lost it. Somebody in the chat room was asking about if Raptor engines, there we go. Wonder why Raptor's not being considered for the Vulcan rocket. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, considering that SpaceX and United Launch Alliance are competitors, and I mean Blue Origin's competitors with them too, kinda, but I doubt that SpaceX would seek that out. And even if they did, I doubt that United Launch Alliance would even consider them for that. But that's just my own personal opinion. I mean, miracles can happen, and who knows? Maybe that is the other secret, alternative that United Launch Alliance has been considering for Vulcan, other than Blue Origin's engines or Aerojet Rocketdyne's engines. Who knows? But I don't think that would ever be likely.
Okay, so to be clear, SpaceX makes the Raptor engine, and United Launch Alliance makes the Vulcan rocket, and that's why those two would not necessarily plug and play.
Yeah. And the primary engine that they want to use for the Vulcan rocket is Blue Origin's BE-4 methane engine. So it'd be very similar to the Raptor in a sense, although they have different specifics. But Aerojet Rocketdyne's engine would be kind of the more traditional RP-1, rocket propellant one, and liquid oxygen. So we'll see how things go. And that's what the Atlas V rocket uses now. So it's either going to be a bigger, better Atlas V, or it's going to be a methane-based rocket. We'll see.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'd say I just throwing a spitball out there, if you will. Probably the business. The ultimate business goals are probably radically different, too, since ULA wants to focus on cislunar space, and SpaceX's ultimate goal is people on Mars.
Oh, yeah,
so,
they're just going to different places. Yeah, all right. That answers that,
option,
I suppose.
so.
All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a calendar break, as it were, and look at all of those launches that are coming up. Can't wait to get Mike to dance for us next week. And then Jared's going to set up for his interview with Chris Prophet about the future of SpaceX. Stay with us. There's more tomorrow coming right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Through the heat, keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire.
And welcome back after that quick launch break. Now, before we get started with our interview segment on Tomorrow Today, I just want to give a huge shout out to all of our Escape Velocity patrons. Once again, these folks give us $10 or more per episode on Patreon, and that is very awesome of them. And they get a lot of things, which if you want to hear that lot of things that they get, go back to the beginning of the show. Carrie Ann did an excellent job. To that, we have our Orbital patrons as well. They give us $5 or more per episode. They get their name in the show during this segment and our upcoming comment segment. They also get access to our exclusive Patreon-only hangouts, early access to After Dark as soon as it's available, early access to view-only copy, worldwide shipping in the Tomorrow Swag Store, read-only access to the Tomorrow Host channel, and voting rights on upcoming roundtable discussions. So if you would
Hold.
Okay, yeah, I kind of figured. Do you need me to get up, or?
No, it's not the receiver. The receiver, I watched it while that happened. It's Dante. So, can everyone give me like 2 minutes? We're going to check.
Sure.
Hang on.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minute hold.
We're recycling the count.
The problem is if I do this.
Bear with us, everyone. We're doing new audio stuff this week to make the show better.
Or somebody in the chat room said perfecter.
Perfecter.
See, I'm so glad I didn't wear that shirt because I almost had that exact.
All right, here's the deal, everyone. I believe the issue to be with the Dante audio network that we're running, simply because I could see the new receiver still had signal and it never dropped and it never showed any errors. To change that in the middle of the show would require 30 plus minutes because I'd have to retune everything and change how that route works. So we may have drops from time to time. We're just going to have to live with them.
Okay.
And then, Jared, listen.
Can we dual mic him?
It won't matter. When the Dante is dropping, it's going to cross the board.
It just crosses everything.
That's why when we lost it before, we lost Jared and Carrie Ann.
I thought that was just because it was...
No, it's like drop. It's like the whole network just goes. It drops for a moment and then comes back.
Gotcha.
One thing I can try doing is increasing the Dante latency buffers, which I will do, which will probably cause a reset. So we'll give that. We'll try that really quick. But Jared and Chris, if you hear audio drop, you don't need to talk to it, but certainly try to go back and repeat what you just said, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
Or Jared, you'll probably hear it better than Chris will be able to hear it. But just make note of that. So we're going to take this from the top of the second segment. Chris will be on in just a moment. And then give me 1 moment to change the Dante latency, see if that helps. And then for next week, I'm probably going to move away from Dante. And I apologize for the issues I ran.
All right. All right. Ready, Chris? Oh, wait. Hold on.
Hold.
Apparently, we got another hold.
We're still holding for 2 minutes.
Okay. Gotcha.
It was a real 2 minutes, not a faux 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. Just like in real rocketry, you can't just launch it whenever you want to. So
What?
very important. No.
Can't. Still get all those drinking noises from Jared.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I just
still
realized
love
that
you.
happened.
It's totally fine.
So
It only goes directly into one of my ears.
yeah. Well.
Hey, do you want to put that on the thing?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
Yeah.
Can I?
Yeah, give me a second.
Get that real quick.
No, I got it. You sit. Be
Oh,
pretty.
okay. I'll look smart.
Yeah. And I'll just shake my derriere on camera. It's totally fine.
Come on, Carrie.
All right, now move the cup, because otherwise I'm going to knock it over knowing
Oh,
me.
right. Yeah. Okay. I'm having ginger ale right now, so.
You're having ginger.
Yeah, that's like my preferred drink overall, so.
Ginger ale's really good. I like it. Hey, in case anyone is lacking a
Hear the rocket in the background?
Yes. Oh, no, we're in space.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Those are space sounds.
Because space has an ambient noise to it.
Yeah.
So.
Alpha.
That's neat.
Hey, Chris, that humming.
All right.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah, you think it's Chris?
Is there a home?
Hold.
Yes,
Wait.
there is.
Oh, no. Yeah, there's a really low, sounds like you're on the Starship Enterprise.
Which is awesome.
Hang on. Is that any better?
Hang on.
I can knock it out, but it knocks
Hi.
out all of his bass.
Turn it off for a second.
I think it might be at my end. I had a hum early on.
Well, hang on. We're just going to turn we're going to turn a really
Yeah, but when he talks,
talk to me again, Chris.
Hi. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Can you see?
Yeah.
My
there's definitely
my hum.
Yeah, there's definitely a hum. How annoying is that, internet?
I mean,
No, I think it's my headphones. I asked them to check it in the shop. They said they checked it, and there's just been this intermittent hum now and again. You still getting it? Is that good?
We are, but I feel like we can. We've got a high pass filter on. We can make it a little more aggressive.
everyone says it's less annoying than no sound at all. So, I mean, let's be fair.
All right. Well, I've turned. I have done some tweaks to Dante. Let's see if that fixes it. I feel like this is good enough to go for now, unless the internet disagrees. So, Jared, just remember, if you hear a whole cut, just try to go back. If it's long enough where it's disruptive, try to go back to that
Gotcha.
area. Cool,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay.
Let's start from black and bring up this segment. Sorry for the troubles, everyone, and thank you for your patience.
So. No, Ben, it's bad. You should feel bad. We good? Yes. Yes? You good, Chris?
If you can hear me?
Yes, we're good. So, all right. Am I just going on my own, or are we going to come back? Ah, okay. Gotcha. That answers that. And welcome back after that launch calendar break. Now, before we get into our interview segment for today's Tomorrow Show, I first would like to give a huge shout out to our patrons of Tomorrow of our Escape Velocity variety. These folks give us $10 or more per episode. And if you would like to hear everything that you get as an Escape Velocity Patreon supporter, head on back to the beginning of the show and listen to Carrie Ann rattle off everything, because it's amazing. In addition to that, we also have our Orbital patrons. These folks give us $5 or more per show. They get their name in the show during this segment, in our comments segment, access to exclusive Patreon-only hangouts, early access to After Dark, early access to a view-only copy of the show rundown, free worldwide shipping for the Tomorrow Swag Store, read-only access to the Tomorrow Host chat channel. That's a future reward, letting you know a little bit there, and voting rights on upcoming roundtable discussions. So if you would like to help crowd fund the shows of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. And I'm very excited about today's show, because just a few shows ago, we talked about the history of SpaceX, and we learned some things, like there were different rockets and other stuff with that. But today, we have Chris Proffitt, the author of SpaceX from the Ground Up, who is going to be talking to us today about the future of SpaceX. Chris, welcome to Station 204.
Hi, glad to be here. Great show. I usually watch it every week.
Awesome. Well, now you're here, and we're going to talk to you about the future of SpaceX. And of course, the future is coming, but the present often influences the future of what we may be doing in space and sciences with that. So what are some of the things that SpaceX is doing right now that are precursors for some of the work that will be occurring in the future?
Okay. That's a good question. Everybody knows about the point-to-point transit project they've got running at the moment. I feel that is going to be very important for their future. It seems a little bit of a diversion, really, that doing point to point. They're flying to Shanghai or Honolulu or wherever, where the corporate goal is to get to Mars. But Elon Musk, SpaceX have this philosophy where they look at projects, they look to see how they can do something that's worthwhile, meaningful, going to grant some benefit to everybody, make a business out of it, and the money they generate, they can use that to fulfill their or present opportunities to achieve their longer term goals. Now, that point-to-point transit, as I say, it seems like a diversion. Why are they going to Honolulu when they want to go to Mars? But if you look at the system they're projected to deploy, they want to put down these floating spaceports, which are a little bit like the ASDS, the landing barges they use, but on a grander scale. Now, they're going to put those down in various strategic points around the world. That's going to be really helpful for people for getting from A to B. But once every 26 months, when Earth and Mars align, they will have a number of launch sites all the way around the world. One thing they need to do this Mars run is lots of launch sites and lots of launches, basically. You can take off a passenger spacecraft from anywhere around the world, but you need another 4 tankers to refill it to make sure it can reach Mars. Now, so one, they'll have the launch sites already in place. It'll be paid for by normal commercial operations. Also, they'll have an awful lot of BFR passenger type craft, so they can just take the passengers out of that, launch it empty, but with a full tank of fuel. They can fly up, refill the passenger BFR that are heading towards Mars. So they've got the launch sites and they've got the tanker craft, and they haven't had to pay for any of it. It's all been sort of harvested from normal commercial operations. Yeah, there might be like intermission between normal sort of point-to-point transit, but it's all reasoned and reasonable. And well, if they're not going to get any support from anybody outside the company, which there's pros and cons with that, it can be done. It's very insightful. I'm surprised a few people in the press might not have picked up on that, but you've got to really look inside the way they work. That is, everything's commercial. Everything has a reason, and it has a short-term goal to provide some benefit and a long-term goal, which is Mars, basically. Well, that's my perspective anyway.
Yeah, I've got sort of a question about point-to-point that I'm going to throw to you, and I don't know whether you'll have the answer for something like this or not. But with the BFR and the spacecraft, specifically with point-to-point, is SpaceX looking at that as a supplier, like Boeing is, where Boeing will build a 787 Dreamliner for a company? Or are they going to be the supplier / company to get you, transport company there?
Well, I can only go on their past performance. People have come to them in the past. SES, I believe, after they had their stage land, they mooted. They asked whether they could keep the stage because they paid for it. And I understand. So in any case, SpaceX said, "Well, no, actually, you've effectively just hired it for one launch. You pay for the launch service. It belongs to us, but we operate it, and we'll gladly use it again to launch one of your satellites. But we can't guarantee it'll be that stage. It's like the Shell game. It could be any stage, whatever we have available at the time, basically. So I believe it's just too critical. If you can imagine, they're operating these strategic landing sites, floating landing sites around the world, and just to say, oh, all right, well, there's a guy in Shanghai who would like to take over operation, and he says he'll do a great job, and that landing cradle will be open and ready, and the fuel will be all ready to go as soon as you land. You don't have to worry about it. He's provided us, a good internet degree certificate. No, they're going to want to do that work themselves because the whole operation is just so critical. It's their baby, and these sites are going to be strategically important for them in the future. I mean, it's not just technically important. If you think about it, the SpaceX are planning on sending millions of people. Elon was saying during the week that they want. That's the only way they're going to have industry working on Mars. They need millions of people there. Now, they can either take, 1 in every 15 Americans out of the population and fly them to Mars, or you can take them from all the way around the world. They just have launch sites suitable for BFR, situated all the way around the world. I mean, some of these people they're going to take, it's like offering an olive branch to China and Russia and say, well, look, I know we've been sort of going on our own to do this Mars run, but we could help you if you want to. You can participate. You can send your people out to your local spaceport or take off from them, and that'll solve the problem about how to get them from A to B. I mean, some of those people they get from, say, China, there might be nuclear experts, rocket scientists, submarine specialists. Now, these are all people they're probably not going to want to travel to the American mainland. So if they can have a nice ceremony, waving off ceremony on the beach, and they get on a local spaceport, well, that's all to the good. That's certainly going to help with international diplomacy and space exploration. As far as I can see, the whole thing is very well integrated. It's no wonder Elon seemed to be, well chuffed about the idea, because, well, it's big.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the international aspect of it with relations between countries with that. So we've got a lot of questions coming in from the chat room, and we're just going to go straight into them. The first one comes from Lur, which is that the launch window to Mars is open every 26 months or so, and they need to give BFR something to do during the downtime. So I guess to kind of take that and modify that into a question, what is BFR, besides point-to-point, going to be doing in that downtime between Mars launch windows?
You can do anything. As Ben was saying, Space Mike? Yeah, Space Mike, get his name right. It can fly to low Earth orbit, you fuel it back up again, you can send it to the moon, you can come back from the moon without refueling. So, you want to set up a lunar colony, fine. I know Europeans are very interested in setting up a village up there, a lunar village. There's a lot of the things which actually generate money are Earth-centric at the moment. So it's the ideal vessel, 150 tons if you do it reusable to low Earth orbit. Possibility to sending it to cislunar space. I mean, you want to do anything you want with it. It's got that capability. I mean, one thing I particularly think would be a big possibility is that military, the Air Force, however you want to style them, they're very interested in this next generation launch vehicle, another EELV vehicle, basically. Now, they must miss some of the capabilities from Space Shuttle, i.e. sending crew to space, retrieving satellites, launching satellites sort of quietly, shall we say. And BFR is like a space shuttle on steroids. It's 150 tons to low Earth orbit. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, they're also talking about forming a space corps, separating all the space operations and making it like the Marines are to the Navy. Again, this vehicle is just slow plumb down the middle for what they need. What can I say? I think it's going to be very, very busy, especially if they're going to launch like 12,000 satellites for a low Earth orbit constellation, their internet constellation. Really, I don't think they're going to want for applications for it one little bit, basically. So capable, so very capable. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of that internet constellation, we actually have a question from the chat room about that in relations to BFR from Ron Smith 3, which is that will SpaceX need BFR to build out its internet constellation, or will the constellation pay for BFR?
Well, when Elon launched the Seattle operation, he said that what they were doing would pay for a city on Mars. So obviously at that time, I believe he was projecting that he could pay for BFR out of normal operations. That's what he certainly implied at the IAC in Adelaide. I mean, I sort of detail their finances in the book. They seem to make quite a good deal of money, basically. NASA work pays to keep the lights on, so any money they make from commercial operations, launching, for satellites, it's just disposable income, basically, and they have quite a good deal. The only sort of thing that might be a problem is that they're doing that big internet satellite constellation, and they're building the BFR at the same time. So I believe he said they're going to have to do a little bit of creative finances. But I don't know how far you want to go into that, but there are plenty of options for them. But it's going to be tight in these next few years, and BFR really can't come online soon enough because of the capability.
Yeah, and Sarge Enzyme in our chat room has a question about the capability of BFR, which is, what about building the next space station? And I would say that, yeah, definitely, considering everything that you've just said about the capabilities of BFR. And I mean,
next space station. I mean, it is a space station. Have you seen it? Have you seen the picture of it docked to the ISS? It's like
yeah, it's big, and yeah, we were talking about, you could literally put instruments all over the place with the interior volume that it has. You should be able to put a ton of instruments in there and carry the people.
Why do you need a station when you've got something that can go anywhere in cislunar area? I mean,
it is the station.
Better instrumentation.
It's a station that just happens to have a lot of a very high thrust to weight ratio and a little bit of a cross range capability when it returns. Yeah. So reusable space stations. Who would have thunk, huh? So also from the chat room as well, Lur has another question, which are there any partners for the internet satellite network? Because I've seen some really cool discussions about this on Twitter this week from some people that I follow. But are there any partners for that internet satellite network at the moment?
There are none declared at the moment, as far as I know. But the potential partners is every internet service provider everywhere, because this is like a backbone service they're operating. You can send stuff through space faster than you can through a normal optical cable under the ocean, however you want to do it. This is going to be, they're talking about big data transfer. That's going to be a big money earner. Of course, yes, everybody in the world will be able to have internet at a very low latency, one terabit transfer rates. So yeah, they could essentially compete with ISPs, but they're probably the existing ones in the urban areas. They're just going to say, well, look, if you want to communicate with another urban area, you don't have to lay a cable, just uplink to us, and we'll however much data you want to shift, we've got the capacity. It's all, the internet is now in space.
Yeah, and
it's the backbone.
If I remember right, the maiden flight of the 1.1 version of Falcon 9 flew Cassiope, which was an experiment by the Canadian Space Agency to do exactly that. So pretty interesting that's coming full circle with their ideas. So obviously the end game for SpaceX is people on Mars, and not just people on Mars, lots of people on Mars. That's sort of what I feel like separates them from other companies looking at going at Mars. With what does the pathway to that look like? Because that's not particularly, it's not what I call a easy pathway to take that. What kind of things are going to occur along the way to make that happen?
Well, obviously, Raptor engine is really important, as you were discussing earlier. I mean, it's as though SpaceX has reached into the future and pulled an engine out of the future. I mean, the Raptor engine is I can't express how important it is, because a rocket development, it sort of turns on the engine. If you have the engine, well, the rest of the rocket is not so hard. I mean, that engine should really not be with us until about 2050, because it's an engine which allows you to go from Earth to land to Mars, refuel with with perhaps lower grade propellant, ISRU, methane and oxygen, and then come back to Earth, all without an overhaul. I mean, that's massive. In the past, those engines have just been fire for 2-3 minutes and then chuck them in the ocean. The difference that makes, I mean, it's only when you sort of say, okay, we need to start colonizing Mars, that you even think about putting an engine together like that. And that's been operating on the test stand for the last year, essentially, and operating well. I mean, I like the way that as soon as they put it on the test stand, it worked. And you didn't just do a blip test. It ran for quite an extensive amount of time. You know, it's just reliable. That is just what they need. What other technologies are we going to need? A lot. But Elon doesn't sort of say, all right, I'm just going to do this and focus, and there's nothing, and everything else is going to have to be sorted out later on or by somebody else. No, he thinks with rather a wide vision. I mean, there's various things that are being done. I understand they're looking into nuclear propulsion, which is all going to be useful for Mars, because when that sandstorms blow, as they do quite regular, those solar cells are going to be pretty much useless. Yeah, they're going to have some capacity in the batteries. I mean, let's just look at it. Solar cells could be supplied by Tesla or Solar City. You know, they're part of Tesla now. The high storage capacity batteries, again, Solar City, Tesla, all-terrain vehicles for Mars, Tesla. You need to have burrowing machines to excavate the water on Mars, all right? Because it's all frozen underground. So, I mean, where are they going to get that from? If they look out the window at SpaceX, there's a big tunneling machine out there in the car park. You know, where's it coming from? It's all coming from now, basically. You need lots and lots of robots on Mars because you've got a real shortage of labour there, manpower. So, where's the AI going to come from? OpenAI. There's a company that Elon has just started called OpenAI, where they're going to put together an open source artificial intelligence program. Things are moving forwards. I mean, habitats, people say, oh, well, what about the habitats? But the habitats are just geostationary, geodomes, yeah? Geodesic domes. And if you look at the first design of the ITS, they've got around half of the face is covered by a geodesic dome. So they're obviously going to test out the technology on the ITS. If it works, which I'm sure it probably will, they'll just make those. They'll just have the dome go all the way around and packed up, flat packed inside the BFR and wheeled out, deployed when they need it. So things are happening. Yeah, he's not sort of leaving it up to chance. I believe he's even been talking to a group, Arizona University, about closed system ecosystems, where you basically recycle everything, because that's what you can't waste anything when you're on Mars. Everything's a resource. If you bring something, you want to get the maximum work out of it. So it's all happening, but it's happening behind the scenes. Well, I try and describe a little bit about that in my writing. So, any other questions about that, Jared?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Duco from our chat room has a question, which is asking, will we see a Mars crew orbit Earth for half a year or more before going to Mars? So I just kind of want to expand that a little bit to what are the general operations of a typical SpaceX Mars mission? What do you think they would end up looking like?
Well, we know the first one is probably going to be up to about 12 people. Those are going to be some pretty hard-working engineers, maybe split across 2 ships. That was the original plan with the ITS. But as far as I can see, they'll launch these rockets from wherever, Shanghai, Los Angeles, whatever. They'll go up, then straight away it'll be refueled, and then refueled, and then refueled, because all the time those people, you can have up to 100 people on board, all the time they're there. They're devouring food supplies, eating into the ECLSS, the life support system. So they want to get, and also the fuels boiling off. Oxygen, methane, it's just boiling off. So they need to get it up there, refueled as quickly as possible, on its way to Mars, and then hopefully they can fit in like 2, 3, or even 4, in every window. But they have to do it quick, and that's what they need the multiple launch sites for, and the multiple tankers. Because, it's great having a BFR where you can turn around in 24 hours, but that might be too long. They might need to do it faster than that. They want to have those tankers just literally lining up, ready to dock, and just plug in and then plug and play. Scoot to Mars. That's how I perceive it's going to go down. I can't see any reason why not, because they get to Mars and they managed to survive for 26 months, and they just haven't got enough food for the last day. Well, no, if they go sooner, they go, the more food they have, the more chance they'll have of survival. So I think it's going to be a very quick sort of turnaround. But they can easily sort of fly out to the moon, do long loops around it, test it out. They'll definitely go out on a shakedown cruise before they go all the way to Mars. They'll want to make sure that closed loop ecosystem or whatever it is they're using on board, it's probably just going to be a normal sort of eat and collect sort of operation.
There's going to be no STS-1 all up gut check flight with a system like this. That's for sure. So from YouTube, we have a comment from JC779723, which is, when do you think the normal Joe or Jane will be able to take a space trip? So with SpaceX, when do you think that's going to be possible?
Well, I mean, this is the idea behind the point-to-point, essentially. They say they're going to have that together in 2020. They're going to start doing suborbital hops. I mean, again, it's just part of a very big strategy. If you can get people going on those flights, I mean, you could say, oh, right, well, I'll get on the BFR from Los Angeles to Tokyo and then have a nice proper sushi meal, see some sumo, come back in the same evening. That gets people sort of mindful. Well, it's not so bad in space. All these people who've got a bit of money, although it's supposed to be the same amount as a normal economy fare ticket. So next decade, I put it down for. And those people, once they get used to space travel, they think, well, I might maybe go a little bit further, go to Mars, have a holiday on Mars.
Might as well. So so Total Recall won't just be a movie for much longer. We'll bring that on pretty soon. And then for the final one I'm going to pull from the chat room today is Kajitin. That's a tough one to pronounce. I'll just say K, which is, what do you think? Falcon Heavy maiden flight in December or slip to 2018? It's sort of the thing that everybody's been focusing on recently. So what do you see in your crystal ball of the future with Falcon Heavy?
So hard to call, because I can almost hear Elon saying we have to launch this year. He wanted to go in November. December is a slip that he might be able to accept, but they really need to get that rocket off its tail and show the customers that it's viable. I mean, specifically the Air Force, who are very interested in that high payload. Maybe even have it in direct injection to GEO. Yeah. It's rare, but you've got a big rocket like that, you can go anywhere. So they really, I mean, that said, I'd love to see it this year. But realistically, considering the amount of technical challenges, they've got to get the pad together. They've got to test the boosters. They'll probably test them individually and then all together. I think it's going to slip. I mean, people who want to go, they want to have a Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was fine.
I think it's going to slip in January. That's just my opinion. I'd love to see it go before then.
Yeah, it was Feynman who said, "For nature cannot be fooled." So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that there. So Chris, we have got 5 standard questions that we ask everyone at the end of our interviews. There are no right or wrong answers to these. Just tell us what you think. Tell us as much as you think about it as well. So here are our 5 questions that we always ask everybody. Our first one, Moon or Mars first?
Moon, so that SpaceX can get more money to go to Mars. They just drop off some NASA guys there and say, there you go, you're on your own now.
Yeah.
And just sign the check.
So long, and thanks for all the cash. For space, would you go?
I'm already there. Oh, don't worry.
So when do you think humans will first land on Mars?
Oh, right. Well, we all know it's the 2024 launch window, landing in 2025, maybe. Again, I think it'll probably slip. It's just, I'm going to be optimistic and say, 2027, something like that.
Okay.
Because they've just got so much work. So much, and now they've got the international point-to-point sumo sort of thing, and Elon will want to have his own private rocket fly from Los Angeles to Shanghai, because he's opening a new Tesla factory in Shanghai, so he won't want to muck in with the economy on the class on the normal aircraft.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll just step out of the office to the Hawthorne Airport and they'll launch it from right there. So, when do you think humans will set foot on the moon again?
Oh, relatively soon, I'd have thought. Definitely before the middle of the next decade. If you got the BFR, why not? It's an obvious point of call. Elon has said it himself. If you got an ocean liner that can go from the America to Britain, I mean, why not go from Britain to France just across the Channel? It's no hassle, and none whatsoever. In fact, it's quite expected, I think, just to give it a shakedown. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then our final question, which is also my favorite one, which is why space?
Why space? Oh, right. How long have you got?
Go ahead. Just roll with it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. At the moment, we're sort of an interesting place. It seems to me where we are at the moment is in a new renaissance. We were very stuck where we were. We believed only government could do stuff. Or very, very big industries. But after Silicon Valley, we worked out the best way of doing things is small groups of individuals working tirelessly. They can really put stuff together. Now, history tends to repeat itself. So after Renaissance, you have the age of discovery. Now, all the technologies we've developed in this new Renaissance age is going to lead us to space. When we get to space, we get to Mars, we find out new stuff, find out new challenges. Everything's new on Mars. Everything's a challenge. They can't just send out for parts because it's going to be 26 months. They need to get new technologies together to solve new problems and finding ways of fixing things. So straight away, that forces the development of a new industrial age. They probably won't even call it industrial age. They call it something like the quantum revolution, instead of the industrial revolution. And these technologies, they'll come back to us. We'll enhance them and send it back out to space. This all humans do best when they face challenges, and there's nothing more challenging than going to Mars or opening up colonies anywhere else. Just in space. It's what we need. We've got a little bit stultified. We've started to break out of it with Silicon Valley, the new information age. But we need a push. We need to complete the cycle, get all the way through to that next industrial revolution where things get really, really interesting. AI and neural dust, where you can have direct interfaces from your brain to via an AI to other people's AIs, and neural dust and quantum computing, communications via quantum entanglement. So it's zero sort of time. All that stuff, it comes from space. But the main benefit I can see for us in space at the moment, is that if we start going out into space, we become more outward looking. So, I mean, the dinosaurs died because they didn't have a space program. How much more reason do you need than that, basically?
All right, Chris Prophet, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, glad to be here, and good questions.
Yeah, thanks again. So, coming up after this segment, your comments. There's more tomorrow, right after this.
You look down from orbit from 240 miles, 240 nautical miles, and there are no boundary lines on the ground. And I just thought, and I know I wasn't original, that it's been proposed before, that having political discussions regarding country incursions on another country's property or that could be better handled by being in orbit, and you could see that it's just part of our blue and green ball.
And welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, before we get started with comments from our last show, did want to give a shout out to all of the patrons of Tomorrow who've helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are people who've contributed $10 or more to this episode. They're Escape Velocity patrons. We also have our Orbital patrons who've contributed $5 or more, as well as our Suborbital patrons who've contributed $2.50 or more. Every single dollar helps. Every single patron helps. To find out how you can help crowdfund the shows of Tomorrow, head over to patreon.com/TMRO. And if you can't become a patron, or that's not really your thing, that's cool too. Simply subscribe to the show on YouTube. That will help out a great deal. All right, let's get started with some comments from last week's shows. Capcom, what did we have last week?
We had John Amabile, author of Changing the Worlds, plural.
Plural.
Just in case.
Yep.
And you guys had a lot of comments
Yes, quite a few.
About this one. The first one actually comes off of Patreon, as mentioned before, from Tarantula, saying, this approach to colonization seems to be very confident in capitalist models. Of course, profits will drive the most ambitious efforts. Moon from 2009 seems very apt, the movie we're talking about there. Yet, with humans gone, will there be hope for robots?
Space Mike, I'll throw that one to you.
I have no audio from Space Mike.
Mike, did we lose your audio on our side or your side?
I hope not.
Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me? Test.
Better.
Okay. So I'm not sure I understand this question correctly, but I mean, with humans gone, will there be hope for robots? I mean, if AI develops, then sure.
Hang on one second. I'm going to give us an edit point. Let's go full screen on Space Mike.
Testing.
There you go.
2,
No,
3.
we got you. We're going to go there, and let's resume your answer from here. So start as if you're just now answering.
All right. Well, I'm not sure that I understand this question correctly. I mean, with humans gone, will there be hope for robots? I mean, if artificial intelligence gets developed, then sure, why not? It'll just multiply indefinitely like the Borg or something like that. But I think that you are right that profits are what's going to drive us expanding out into space for at least the beginning.
Sure. I mean,
For those of you who haven't seen the movie Moon, I really do suggest that you do go out and see it. It centers around there's some mining going on the moon, and mostly robots are doing it, but they have to have one human to kind of take care of the robots, as it were. And then there's one extra AI that's kind of taking care of the humans. Named Gertie.
That's what our car is named after.
That's what our car is named after.
There you go.
It is a really good movie if you haven't seen it. Sam Rockwell does a great job.
I think a lot of people had issues with the capitalist side of this on the channel, and I think there's something to be said for making money. You can't just we can hope for a Star Trekian kind of view of the future where money is no longer required, but that is not the world in which we live right now. And if we want to make great things happen right now on time frames that are within our lifetime, we have to work within the confines of what society is used to, and that means it will be capitalist. So, I mean, that's not truly what this comment was touching on, but I mean, I think touching on some of the other comments that were there that list.
Okay, next comment comes off of YouTube from Atticland. This sounds an awful like the kind of expletive project that would lean to an Expanse-like future. Expanse, a great TV show. If you haven't seen that, go ahead and see that in sci-fi, where humanity has gotten to lots of places and has gotten much done in space, but everything is based off of driven by endless greed. Not a great adventure with quote-unquote high ambitions like NASA or Musk envisioned. Not sure what to think of that. Kind of like you were saying, I suppose, a little bit. I think even if money itself very specifically is not involved, there's going to be some sort of bartering kind of system. There just simply has to be. Not everyone is going to magically get along and everyone's going to love each other. It's going to be like, hey, I noticed you have those fruits and vegetables and I happen to have cows and goats. How about a swap? Fantastic. Like, and then, so it doesn't have to be money specifically, but I think any sort of, sometimes people look towards Burning Man, for instance, for a good sort of like, oh, it's just peace and love and everything's amazing. Sure, but there's still some bartering going on. If I have fresh water, you have baked goods, you want a shower, I want to eat something. Cool. And then there's a system that just naturally occurs inside of that sort of grouping, if you will. And so I think, like you were saying, I think, yes, sometimes it sounds like a bad capitalist, evil, like only greedy, only for money sort of situation. But the truth of the matter is somebody's going to have something that you're going to want. You're going to have something that somebody else is going to want. And when the two of you meet, you are going to figure out some kind of system of exchange. Yeah. And I think that's really more what this is going towards. And then sometimes that just happens to be about money.
Yeah, and in spaceflight, it's going to be especially amplified because sometimes that exchange may be for life-saving stuff. Like we need, 10 more kilograms of oxygen in order to operate the base for a certain amount of time. How do we get that, kind of thing.
Sure.
So, yeah.
All right, let's do one more comment, Capcom.
Sure. It says, this one comes from Luke off of YouTube. It says, I don't think this guest has any idea what he's talking about, and it's quite clear Ben is uncomfortable having the conversation with him.
Oh, well, I'm sorry that I gave off, I don't...
To be fair, Ben's always uncomfortable.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I feel like I'm uncomfortable right now, just in my own skin. I didn't mean to come off as looking uncomfortable or being uncomfortable having a conversation. I certainly did push back with certain things where... anything where the physics didn't seem to quite line up, or like the velocities involved weren't quite right. Like the numbers weren't. If the numbers weren't closing, I was certainly pushing back on that because the numbers aren't closing. I think it's only impossible until it isn't. Landing rockets is just a stupid and terrible idea. You don't have the payload margin to do it. No one's ever done it before. We tried it with the space shuttle. It was super stupid expensive with that. Landing rockets is stupid. Until it isn't.
Yeah.
Right? So, it's easy to look at ideas like this to go, oh, that's way too ambitious. I don't get that. None of this makes any sense. Until it does. So, I don't like to judge ideas based on anything other than the physics and the math behind them. From that regard, I'm human, so exceptions to that rule. But, right, I mean, if the numbers don't close, I'll push back on that. But if you have an idea, just because it's different, just because it looks at things differently, I'm not going to say that that's a bad idea or that you don't know what you're talking about. I would love to give you the benefit of the doubt and hope that that idea comes to fruition, much like that week's guest. And that is the idea that I'd like to convey, which is, look, he has an idea as to how to colonize the solar system in our lifetime. And even if some of the numbers don't close, instead of going, that's a stupid idea, let's not do that, let's help him close the numbers. Right? I mean, instead of, it's easy to just be on the internet and be like, blah, bad idea. It's much harder to go, okay, well, those numbers don't close. How about this? Would this help you close that gap? I think that's a much more useful use of energy than just, blah, sucky idea. By the way, just in general. I think that's just a general life tip. So that was my takeaway. It wasn't, this is a bad idea. I wasn't uncomfortable, and I didn't feel like it was not achievable. I think some of those ideas were very aggressive.
Quite aggressive.
I think some of those timelines are quite aggressive. But you know what? I can say that about a lot of new space companies that set timelines that seem to only be 6 months out consistently. It's a running joke on the show. So, I mean... right? I mean, you can't. It all comes together. Final comments on that one from anyone? Did you have anything? Anyone else?
No, not really.
So, all right, great. That's our show. I'd like to thank all of our ground support patrons as well. These are people who have contributed between $1 and $2.49. They get their name in the show. They also get access to After Dark as soon as it's available on demand. And Carrie-Ann, who do we have coming up next week? I believe that is...
So next week we have somebody that we've had on previously, although talking about something a little bit different. A good friend of the show, Mr. Will Pomeranz, although we are going to be speaking about the Brooke Owens Fellowship Program, which is really, really cool things. I don't want to give too much away, but he's one of the founding partners of the Fellowship Program, of course, named for the wonderful Brooke
We're going to
Owens.
have a bunch of people on that particular show.
Yeah, we're going to need extra chairs for that one.
Chairs, and we're pulling all the old microphones back in.
We're going to have all of the microphones. It's going to have all of the problems. It's going to be great.
It's going to be a press conference, not a round table.
It should be really interesting. I'm excited for that one.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, that's our show. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. After Dark is up next. All right, Mike, we know you're on a timeline, Mike, so we have done a hyper-fast reset, so let's get straight into your segment so we can release you from the show. And I'm sorry that we're running late, Mike, so we'll try to get you back on schedule.
No, thank you very much. We're doing all right. I got about 15 minutes. So.
Cool. All right, let's kill the music and just go ahead and go straight into it.
Whenever you're ready, Carrie-Ann.
Innovative clustering satellites to be tested at the International Space Station. It sounds like, what was that stupid swarm thing you were talking about? The swarm of, I was thinking because of swarm of satellites.
The Dyson sphere?
The Dyson
Call it Lego
That's
satellites
the
if you
thing
want.
I'm talking about.
No, I know you're not talking about, but you know what I'm saying. Okay.
Call it Lego satellites if you want.
Lego satellites? Lego sounds too much like LIGO, and then that could be really confusing. Okay, sorry. Do you want me to say that there's... Because I feel like every time if we open this, say there's more news that we didn't get a chance to get to.
No. We're kind of doing these as standalone things at this point.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I introduced these as Space Pod last week.
Great. So I'll just do that then.
Sure.
That was a joke.
Oh, all right.
Fantastic. What day is this supposed to come out? Tuesday. Welcome to your Tuesday Space Pod. And Mike, we're talking a little bit about what you jokingly called Lego satellites. Tell me some more about what's going on with the International Space Station and these things.
So yeah, at the International Space Station last week, some astronauts linked together some Lego satellites, or rather some modular satellites from a company called NovaWorks. And with these, it was a very interesting test, and it might be a very radical new approach to satellite design and manufacturing. So instead of fitting spacecraft components into some sort of spacecraft bus that, companies have been doing for decades, NovaWorks invented what they're calling hyper-integrated satellites, or HISATs. They're identical 7-kilogram modules that have everything that you would need to function, including communications, being able to point your spacecraft where you need to, power, data processing, and propulsion as well. You can see those little nubs sticking out. Some of them are for connections, and some of them have RCS with them. So that's really cool. And what they can do with these is they can put together any number of these HISATs that they want. They measure 20 by 20 by 10 centimeters, so a little bit bigger than a CubeSat, but they snap together just like Legos, and you can put them together in all sorts of different ways. And what they did after years of developing this and ground testing, plus 2 years of storage on the International Space Station, this past week on October 25th, astronauts assembled a small satellite by snapping together 6 of these HiSats that also had 2 deployable solar arrays, which were built by a company called Pumpkin, and they also had an electro-optical imager that was a NASA-sponsored mission called the Satellite Initial Proofs and Lessons, or the acronym for that is SIMPLE. So just a simple test.
Of course.
But the astronauts, after they put that together on October 25th, they actually launched it from the ISS on October 27th using NanoRacks Caber microsatellite deployer, which provided a key test of how well these HiSats actually function as a single unit. Now, DARPA wants to launch 14 of these HiSats next year and enable further development of their Phoenix program, which would have, low-cost innovative space technologies, especially looking at having reusable technologies for satellites. And lots of really cool ideas could come from this. I mean, there's the unit itself that they deployed, and so far on the NovaWorks Twitter, they've been reporting that it's been healthy and that things have gone really well with this. So this could be a very cool, very innovative new way to put satellites together and kind of build custom-made spacecraft for whatever you want, and have a lot of redundancy as well.
That's really funny. I love it. The chat room's actually saying the Borg started this way. And I'm just wondering if that means we can get spaceship out of this. That's just, if I may. Well, thank you, Mike. Very much so appreciated. And if you're interested in any of these sorts of things and other spacey things, feel free to subscribe to our channel where you'll get videos like this and so much more. You can also join us live every Saturday at 1800 UTC.
Perfect.
Yeah?
Mike, you happy?
Cut and print. Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Great. Then we can get you out of here early.
All right. Thanks, guys. Today was a good show.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Mike.
We'll see you next week, Mike.
Good job, Jared, for the interview. And Chris Prophet, thank you very much for joining us. And you definitely had some interesting insights.
Well, interesting thing to say. Whether they're insights, well, time will tell. Have you got a link to my book, by the way? I don't know if you've got that info.
Did we not do that at the end?
Oh, I don't know.
Chris,
no. I just wondered if you've got a link to put on your website for the show.
Yeah, we should have a link for it.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show description.
We will, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
I don't worry about it. That it's not about the money. It's about getting the message out there. That's the most important thing. But people might want to, have a bit of read into it, because I had to sort of skip over some of the stuff about if you don't go through the age of discovery, you can't get to the new industrial revolution, sort of the interesting stuff.
Sure.
But okay, is Space Mike gone? Pity I could have had an interesting chat with him. And never mind, he's got a prior appointment, has he?
Yeah.
Sorry, I would love to, but yeah, prior commitments. Sorry.
We had a hard out for Space Mike.
All right, everyone, have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Yes, hopefully we have you on again.
And by the way,
looking forward to it.
Chris,
okay.
you do not feel obligated, Chris, to stay on the line at this point. If you want to, by all means. But if you've got other stuff, the main show is done. We're kind of in After Dark, where we're recording our news segments for the next week and just kind of casually hanging around. So if you want to hang out casually, awesome. Otherwise, if you have other things to do on your Saturday or Sunday.
No, I cancelled because obviously, it's more important. So you're going to go on and do air stuff. Okay, well, I'll listen in for a bit. I ain't got anything else to do at the moment. It's been pretty interesting so far.
well, we'll kind of, if it's all right, we'll kind of bring, once we get through the news section here, we'll kind of maybe bring you back in and see if the chat room has any more questions for you. All right.
This next picture that's in preview is really cool, and I want a shirt that looks like that.
Yeah, that is really cool. That's raw data too. So that's how we look. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Maybe you can bring that up.
I very well might.
I can talk a little bit about how we
try not to talk too much over your crap, but
look at and interpret astronomical data. So.
Interpolate.
Interpolation.
All right.
Jared, can I get some solo audio from you, please? Can you turn your mic on, please?
No, it was on.
No, it was not. It is now.
It wasn't? Oh, okay.
Yep, thanks.
Jeez.
I will say the switches on these are
off?
so tiny, and I can't tell which direction either. Like, I know there's nothing you can fix.
Yeah, it's nothing I can do, but they're pretty hard to flip. So just turn them on and just don't touch them, and then if they accidentally flip, we'll just monitor that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, once
Okay.
they're on, no need to ever touch them again. Just leave them on.
Interesting. Maybe I butt-offed it or something.
Yeah, you gotta sit on
Butt-buttoned it or something. I don't know.
Let's track that. All right.
Okay. So this one's Thursday?
This is Thursday, correct?
Poor Jared, always second.
It's all right. I'm one day closer to Friday, so fine with that.
I like your title because there's not jack anything I can do with that.
Well, that's what everybody's doing right now, anyhow. So
It's just hilarious. I can't be like, oh, and this one is called what?
Do you want a new one? I can figure out.
No, it's totally fine.
That's what everybody's been doing this week, anyhow. Everybody's just been like, what? No. Hold on. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Oh, so Mike's Spacepod's coming out on Halloween, huh?
Oh. Cool. Should have had him dress up.
He did dress up. He wore a collared shirt. You read those comments, right? Yeah. Okay, ready? Welcome back to the conversation. This is your Space Pod for Thursday. Jared, there's a lot of question marks in this title. What the Falcon is happening?
Okay, so every once in a while the universe kind of throws us a curveball, but this one's not really a curveball. This one's kind of like a fastball because it's a very fast object. So this is really bizarre. This is an actual one-of-a-kind object that's currently cruising through our solar system. It was spotted by the Pan-STARRS telescope.
This is can I have this on a t-shirt, please?
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
And this is just data this is an optical view of that object that we're looking at from the Virtual Telescope project, by the way.
That's amazing.
Which is very cool. Which did not spot this object. It was spotted by the Pan-STARRS telescope, which Pan-STARRS, for those of you keeping the acronym score out there, is the Panoramic Survey Telescope and Rapid Response System. Great acronym. And this telescope is specifically supposed to look for near-Earth objects. And the data from the observations of this object, which we initially called C2017-U1, made no sense whatsoever. We found it at about 26 million kilometers away from the Earth, and the object is apparently outbound on its orbit, which is not unusual to find things that are on their way out from their closest approach to the solar system. Mm-hmm. But it was traveling at like 40 kilometers a second, and that's really unusual. This object is moving so fast that it's overcome the gravitational pull of the sun. It's not just outbound, it's leaving our solar system and it's never coming back. Huh. So what they did is they grabbed some more images of it and they figured out its orbital parameters, mm-hmm. and it came in from nearly above the solar system, what we call the solar apex. And it came in at a velocity well above that of what we would expect of a typical comet. So that means that this could potentially be an interstellar object, something zipping through our own solar system, but its origins are outside of our solar system. Now, the difficulty of building up speeds as fast as this object is moving, just by natural interaction with objects in our own solar system, are extremely low. And as you can imagine, when they published the orbital parameters of this object, it caused a tremendous amount of attention to come towards it. And it currently has the highest, what we call orbital eccentricity of any object ever calculated within our solar system. And just a little quick thing to sort of give you some factoids. Mm-hmm. For orbital eccentricity is a measurement of how much a body in orbit deviates from a perfect circle. So if you have 0 eccentricity, you have a perfect circle. Mm-hmm. Anything between 0 and 1 is an elliptical orbit, which mm-hmm. is basically what most things are in. Mm-hmm. 1 itself, 1 eccentricity, is an orbit on an escape trajectory, so you're outbound. Anything above 1 is what we call a hyperbolic orbit. That means you're not just outbound, you are like good and gone outbound.
Okay.
And this object has an orbit of 1.19, so it's above hyperbolic. Now, we called it C2017U1. Oh, here's a great animation of the object coming in. This animation lasts 500 years, by the way. It comes in and boom, it's out of here.
Dang.
So it just makes a complete about face. Now, we actually called this object C2017U1 as a cometary designation because of its orbit, but the observations that we've done so far show no coma, or material coming off and gathering around what would be the nucleus of the comet. So for the first time, we reclassified an object from comet to asteroid. So now it is a 2017U1. We're going to do additional observations by ground-based telescopes and the Hubble Space Telescope as well. They've gotten time on it. And early spectral data from a 2017U1 indicates that it is red in color, much like many of the Kuiper Belt objects in our own solar system, and its surface is relatively featureless. There's nothing that we can make out. It's not very big either. They haven't pinned down an exact size yet, but it's definitely under 1 kilometer in size. So it's not a big object. Okay. Now, there's likely been a lot of these kinds of objects that just come into our solar system from interstellar space and then zip through. But the thing is, they probably haven't come as close to the sun as this object has, which then allows it to reflect more light and allow us to actually see it. But it's a classic trajectory of what we would consider an interstellar object coming into the solar system and coming out. And this is what we would expect from the formation of a star and anything around it, because even when we model our own solar system, Jupiter and Saturn, they fling things out into interstellar space because things get close and they move at a fast enough velocity, they overcome the gravitational pull of the sun, and they get flung out. So this is not necessarily what we would call unprecedented in terms of does this actually happen? Yeah, it does. It's expected that interstellar objects are out there. It's just that we've never had the opportunity to actually look at an interstellar object. And this is very, very exciting. And it's going to give us a little, potentially, if it is an interstellar object, a little sample of what objects are composed of out there, and then we can look at that compared to what we expect with our models and see if our models are correct, modify them if need be, and go from there. So super exciting science happening in real time.
So for the t-shirt for this is like, I was a fan of a 2017U1 when it was a C.
C2017U1.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty good stuff. So
cool. Double checking. All right. So if this kind of information still interests you and lots of other spacey goodness, feel free to subscribe to our channel. And if you want more and would like to live and interact with us, feel free to join us every Saturday at 1800 UTC.
That's a wrap.
Woo! Sorry. That was really difficult for a minute
let's
there.
roll the technology back in.
To say they should call it Rama. All right. Well, that's
What? Rama? Why? Rama?
Because there's a book written by Arthur C. Clarke about a alien spacecraft, or assumed extraterrestrial spacecraft, literally taking that kind of a trajectory through the solar system.
Oh, yeah.
And the book's called Rendezvous with Rama because they call the object Rama. So.
Gotcha.
Jared, slide
Rama
your chair a little
down.
to the right. Carrie-Ann, slide your chair a little to the left. Watch this magic.
Yeah. Doggone it.
There's
actually a fun fact I learned this week is that because we've never seen
Jared's fun facts. Jared's fun facts. Jared's fun facts. Go on.
Is that like fun with flags?
A really cool thing that I didn't know this week that basically the entire astronomy community found out this week is that we have no nomenclature, no set standard of what to name interstellar objects.
At all?
Yeah.
Dude, how did you not like?
So,
how does that work?
We've known that because of the stupid naming conventions that y'all come up with.
Blah,
yeah.
blah, blah. But like, really though, really none?
Yeah, none.
Just whoever, like, first. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I'm going to call somebody Jared.
Zappan is like mine.
So
Zappan.
Like, and then that's it.
we just it's never come up. So
It's
nobody ever
never
brought it
come
up. So nobody's ever been like, well, what specific thing should we name it after?
All right, internet, get
like
on this.
It's not like there's nothing very specific. Like if you look at Uranus, its moons are specifically named after characters from Shakespearean stuff and things like that. But we don't have any. It's never happened before. We haven't had a need to figure this out. So Yeah,
it's funny. I just written a story called Corinne Star, and they name a star after just one of the characters in the book. But she managed to scoop a little bit off a rogue planet which came from another star. So she said, I own this rogue planet, therefore I own the star, therefore it's going to be called Corinne Star, which is her name.
That's funny. It's kind of along the lines of people were talking about last week's some comments from last week's show. I can't speak apparently all of a sudden. Talking about like, look, whoever gets to Mars and stays there, quote unquote, owns Mars, which I wouldn't necessarily agree with in that particular way. You don't really like own Mars, but at the same time,
ownership is 9/10, whatever that is.
Sure, no, I was going more towards the idea of sometimes when you talk with astronauts who have been on the International Space Station, and some questions will come up about like, hey, what's the deal with Russians only using the Russian side, and NASA astronauts only using the NASA side, and like what happens there, and like if and or when, really more likely, the NASA side's toilet goes down, like, do you just not use a toilet? Like, what happens there? And almost always, nearly without fail, every one of those astronauts has said, look, when you're up there, they can't tell you what to do. I mean, they can to a certain extent, right? But, like, if we want to swap snacks, because we're sick of eating whatever it is that we're eating, or I thought I would want tacos in space, but it turns out I didn't, and the Russian guys had fish, and it sounded amazing. Like, whatever it is, like, we do the things that we need to do in order to get along. That includes sharing toilets or whatever it is. And I think those same kinds of rules or lack thereof would also still apply on Mars. Like, look, you want me to do something very specific, or you want me to say something in particular on behalf of a government or an agency or anything along those lines, except that I'm the one here. I'm on Mars, so you need me to change something, you come over here and tell that to my face, and then I'll change it. See what I'm saying?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody's in agreement.
Perfect. Good. I was like, either nobody was listening at all, or
no, we all agree. What you said
yeah.
made perfect sense. Yeah.
Sharing toilets is love. Thanks for that, Dutta. That's, I mean, I guess. Just as long as it's not that weird, like, couples potty that was on Saturday Night Live.
Oh my God! What was that called? Like the Love
John or something?
That's a hard no from me.
Yeah.
I think it's a hard no from everyone. Yeah, which is why it was on Saturday Night Live.
It should be. Let's just put it that way.
You can hold hands while pooping.
Nope.
No, I don't think I want to.
So, Chris, I can't talk SpaceX, but was there other stuff that we didn't get to that you wanted to talk about? That stuff and things?
Oh, just generally towards the EELV, it's looking very likely that SpaceX are going to scoop some of that business. There's like 2 or even 3 prototype vehicles that they're going to fund. So, as Space Mike was saying, there've already been 3 tranches of money sent to SpaceX even before we get to this main ELV. Well, let's call it the next generation launch vehicle. So I think it's 90 million they're up to so far, and that's all money to develop the Raptor, which goes into the BFR. So it'd be very strange if the Air Force, helped pay for the Raptor and then said, "Oh no, the spacecraft. Well, what do we need that for?" No, I think they've got an inside straight for that one.
So here's a dumb question. Would you still consider Falcon to be in EELV, Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle? That second E no longer seems to apply to SpaceX nor Blue Origin.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they've got to put EELV. They can't just say ELV, because that would be essentially excluding ULA and all these other sort of 20th century launch providers, shall we call them? We call them legacy. That sounds better, doesn't it?
I like Jason. He called it an ERLV.
Reusable.
Evolved Reusable Launch Vehicle, yeah.
Well, the thing is that it's not that I think much to Chris's point that the vehicle doesn't have to necessarily be reusable with the R that Jason put in there. Any vehicle that is reusable, in theory, could also be expendable. Those two are not mutually exclusive. However, if you are only using expendable, what am I trying to say, non-reusable vehicles, right?
Sure. Whatever the customer wants, the customer gets.
Right, but I mean, it only goes that way. It doesn't go the other way, right? Like, if you've absolutely no way to be able to land your vehicle, it is inherently expendable. But if you can land your vehicle, you don't have to.
It seems like we need a new term, right? So the Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle terminology came out in it was 90s, right? Anyone here remember? I want to say that it was the next. It was for the Delta IV and the Atlas V.
I want to say that was started just after Challenger, because that was the catalyst
the
for
80s.
a lot of this. So.
All right, so, but that was for the development of the Delta IV and the Atlas V, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's in the 80s, right?
Yeah, right. Historian, Mr. Historian.
This one I don't actually know. I would guess it's probably late 90s, mid to late 90s.
I thought it was mid to late 90s, although after Challenger makes sense as well. So that means that it's about 3 decades old. So I feel like, okay, maybe it's time for a new terminology for this next generation of rockets.
1994.
Oh, hey, I think I win.
So,
Didn't I say like early to mid 90s? Boom. Right
but there were a lot. There was a very long period of government-funded studies before that, though. So.
Okay.
But the official requirements for the Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle were published in 1994. That's when things were like, have a go.
But we got ULA working on Vulcan, which is a next generation vehicle. It's going to be way better than anything they've got now. We got SpaceX working on all their new rockets. We got Blue Origin working on all their new rockets. These don't seem to fit. Maybe I'm mistaken, but these just don't seem to fit into the EELV, the Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle classification anymore. There's so much more than they seem to fit those rules, but they seem like there's so much more than that now. Yeah. Seems like we need a new thing.
Cool.
Yeah, neat. All right.
All right, good. You get to work on that. Jared, there's a couple of questions from the chat room, if you wouldn't mind addressing some of those.
Oh, right. Yes.
We'll have to bow out.
Where?
The very bottom 1 or 2?
From YouTube?
I've got at the bottom.
Oh, that's cool.
All right, here.
Oh, thank you. Okay. All right. They're in the host channel? Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so B-Fits from YouTube wants...
Make it red.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Not thinking today.
There you go.
B-Fits from YouTube, Chris, is saying, ask him how they're going to move the BFR from the factory. How are they going to do that?
Okay, now that's a good question. Originally, they said they were going to be putting, they'd be able to fit a 9-meter into the factory at Hawthorne, right? And we all thought, oh, right, okay, that makes sense. That really minimises the cost. But subsequent to the IAC, I believe they've said that they're going to be building their own facility down by the waterfront. Now that implies they're going to be moving it by ocean. You know, they've got a big port down there. I think it's a reasonable sized port. It's called the Los Angeles Port or something like that.
Yeah, it's a little big. Slightly large.
So they could probably handle it down there, shall we say. However, this is the big schema. They're going to be putting these floating launch pads. I'm pretty sure the first one is going to be off Los Angeles. So yes, maybe the first couple of BFRs are going to put on a ship and they'll drag it through the Panama Canal and haul it up on the beach at Boca Chica. But that looks like where they're going to be testing BFR first off. So I mean, there's been no financial support from the people on the Cape. So it looks like they're going to have to do it themselves, and they've got a clean launch site at Boca Chica. They'll put it there. However, in the future, they'll probably just float it out to that big floating spaceport outside Los Angeles and just fly it to wherever they need to go. Because once you're in orbit, I mean, nobody can complain about it because, I mean, shuttle used to fly over everybody's country, so it's all viable, and they don't have to pay shipping charges, just only methane. So it's short-term ship, and long-term it'll just ship itself.
I like that. So I'll definitely run down to El Segundo to take a look at that, or wherever it ends up getting put. So that'd be pretty cool. Another YouTube question from Jim Burr. Question: what the Falcon happened to the awesome propulsive landings that SpaceX was aiming for on Earth? I'm not sure exactly what that's specifically addressing.
I've got a pretty good idea about that.
Now I remember. Yes.
The Dragon 2. Where I mean, it was a hard business decision. Basically, they don't have a budget where they could just keep spending and spending and spending until they get it. NASA said, well, if you're going to drop a capsule from orbit and you want to land it on a sixpence, on a dime, then we really want to have some good sort of simulations, demonstrations, lots and lots and lots of forms to fill, and we're going to have nested committees and iterative, and SpaceX says, okay, all right, we've already thought of something better, so we'll just put it in the ocean, and everybody be happy there. So. And then they can put all that money they would have done into propulsive landing for Dragon 2, just go straight to BFR. Although BFR's got some problems, as if it turns up for the ISS, they got like 150 tons of food. They can't eat 150 tons of food, right? Or they could have 100 astronauts. They can't put 100 astronauts on the ISS, so they might end up just doing one big sort of circuit, go out to the ISS and all the other private stations, and just do it all in one big in one hall.
That'd be pretty entertaining. All right, guys, we got 1 ton of ice cream on this manifest. So
Ready?
Go. Let's have a contest. Where was that one at that I had? Oh yeah, from Twitch, Jaded Animal is asking question: what is the closest distance such a spaceport could be to a city? So
we were talking about that before the show, weren't we? I mean, basically, the deciding factor is the sonic boom, because, I mean, this is the reason it's technology from the future. Again, this ballistic transport, because they tried it with Concorde, but if you fly a large supersonic aircraft over land, you have like miniature earthquakes. The glass falls out the windows and guillotines people's heads off, which, and they're just shaking their hands. Thank you, international traveller, for your for choosing to go supersonic over our city. So no, it's that supersonic effect. You want to get it right out in the ocean. I mean, I believe the space shuttle used to come in over land before it landed at the Cape, but hopefully they can get it coming in over the ocean. It'll pass through the sound barrier over the ocean, and then it will land relatively quickly after that. So it's going to be a reasonable distance out, because you're going to hear that it's a big ship, and soon as they go through transonic, they'll probably want to do that FTBA maneuver, flip it around and drop it on the pad fairly quickly, because
having experienced sonic booms.
I don't know. At least a mile, shall we say? Offshore.
Yeah, that's usually that's a reasonable distance. I know Dutta and I have experience with sonic booms from shuttle returning here in LA. I don't think you guys were here in LA by the time of that, and I do remember they were. You definitely knew shuttle was coming in. You were. I remember one distinctly waking me up when that happened. So
you'd have to try real hard to not hear it.
Yeah, it was one of those things too where.
How do you try to not hear something?
You put earplugs in. You put your head under a pillow. You go into a soundproof room.
You'd have to be in a room in a building that is multiply isolated from outside air sources or any kind of compression.
So the opposite of this studio.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Because we can feel the train go by and it just kind of rumbles the whole building and everything kind of shakes a little bit. And you go,
every
train.
time the train goes by, I always have to be like, train or earthquake?
Right.
We know that, but they don't, because we have high pass filters that everything that we are right next to a train track, and like every
15, 20 minutes.
Give or
There's
take.
this like whoa, rumble that comes through this whole building, and we have the microphone set to cut those frequencies out.
Yeah.
So you have no idea they're occurring. But we're in here just think, I'll be interviewing a guest. I literally think to myself, train. Sorry. Anyhow.
Yeah.
There is something I'd like to add, though, about the supersonic thing. Of course, when you're transiting between one country and the next, there's no supersonic wake because it's in space. It's only when it lands that you'll have any sort of like. Well, it'll announce itself. You'll know when the BFR has arrived. All right.
Incoming spaceship. Bam, bam.
Yeah. As they used to
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. The BFR has arrived.
I was supposed to go pick up my friend coming from Shanghai today. Did you set an alarm? No, I'm just waiting to hear it. So, all right.
Well, yeah, but you've only got 35 seconds to go get him now.
The alarm set itself.
Yeah. So another question.
That's funny.
A question from Uncle Bill. Is the Boca Chica pad large enough for BFR? And will the EPA approve BFR launches from there? I seem to recall there were some limitations.
Oh, absolutely. Spot on there. I believe it's like 6 Falcons, 9, 6 Heavies. But things are negotiable. I mean, say SpaceX go to the lawmakers in Texas and say, well, look, we just don't know what to do with BFR. We don't know whether we should launch it from the Cape or do it from Texas, and they'll be like, we'll double it. You know, whatever they offer you, we'll double it.
So I want to go.
EPA's funding just got cut. I'm sure they'd be willing to get some more money for a little more allowances.
Oh, maybe something can be worked out.
I mean, that happens with Southern California Air Quality Management District too. Is you know you have to pay for, let's say you own a company that does painting. Painting in California is a big no-no because of the toxicity of the chemicals involved, and so every business kind of as a standard is allowed a certain volume of VOCs or whatever, and then anything over that you have to pay for it. And so there are penalties involved, but if you've got the money, you can use all the toxic chemicals you want. You just have to pay for them.
I mean, there is a point here that Boca Chica isn't an ideal site because it's basically alluvial silt that, you know, you can go down hundreds of meters. It's just silt that's washed down the Rio Grande. So you haven't got a very good footing there. So they might go somewhere else or somewhere nearby, somewhere a little bit further along the coast with a bit better footing. But it's a great site because you've got Brownsville Harbour there, and the sea actually, it sort of impinges on the site. So if they wanted to build their own harbour there, you know, all you have to do is dredge and throw down a bit of concrete. It's pretty good otherwise. I think they fixed the footing problem because they just put piles of earth and compacted it down, basically. So it can be done, but although if they put BFR there, it could quite possibly, the pad complex could stretch most of the way to Mexico. It's going to be big.
I got one for you, sort of going in the same way with launch pads, which is that InSight, an upcoming NASA Mars lander, is going to be launching from Vandenberg. It's going to put it into a polar orbit and then go from there because it has the capability to do that. Do you think, is that something that may end up happening with BFR? They may actually, you know, Vandenberg probably not, because you were talking about they're going to use the landing areas from point to point as sort of launch pads as well. So would that be a potentiality?
It seems likely because, I mean, when they go around to this Mars time, are they going to ignore this massive network of launch capability they've got around the world? Say, oh well, no, we've invested all this time and money, and so it seems probable, but there's nothing official on that. Yeah, they could launch Polar out of Boca Chica. The only problem is it's going to be passing over land, you know, relatively quickly. Because, well, let's see, it's Colombia, it's due south, and that rocket's going to be shifting. So, whether they want to do that or not, I don't know.
Hey, Chris, I think we're losing your microphone. It's going into that weird buzzing state again, unfortunately.
Okay, no, I think I've got it. I think I've been. I found out where the buzzing was coming from. Is it clear now?
Yeah, you're good now. You're good now.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, I thought that was
all
me.
right,
So
I fixed it.
it's like, what's going on?
No,
So-
I was doing some work online.
Right.
Right.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? Have I answered your question?
There's a lot of talk of the supersonic part, and I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding. So going back to Neuropilot's question, although it's a statement, the supersonic aircraft lays down a boom and not just a transonic transition. But it's important to understand the difference between a rocket going, a supersonic rocket, and a supersonic aircraft. For example, satellites are supersonic, but you don't hear sonic booms from satellites every day. And the reason you don't hear sonic booms from satellites every day is because they're not in our atmosphere. There's no air for them to be creating said sonic boom. I think that's your point, right? Is that
no, that's spot on. I mean, nothing to add. In space, nobody hears you wee as you go across. You know?
Right. So there will be supersonic. There will be sonic booms when a spacecraft is going faster than the speed of sound and is within atmosphere. Right. There's enough atmosphere for it to compress and create the boom. But
and understand the speed of sound at a higher altitude is also much, much faster than it is at a lower altitude.
Right. So you have to take those things into account. And I think your point is, unlike Concorde, where you've got this plane that's like traveling through atmosphere, essentially horizontally, creating this boom across whatever it's transitioning over, that's not necessarily how a spacecraft would do it. And I am not speaking on behalf of SpaceX, I'm speaking just in general. A spacecraft will create that sonic boom when it transitions into supersonic speed along, while it's through atmosphere, but then it's going to stop creating that boom. And then let's just say it comes back, it's only going to create that boom once it enters back in. It's going to create it around that area. So unlike shuttle, which was transiting over a bunch of land, a rocket may not do that. And if it's landing out at sea, that boom is going to be confined to that area out at sea.
Yeah, and somebody was also talking about sonic booms at launch as well. There is a sonic boom generated at launch, but it's expanding out and up, so it doesn't come back down to the ground. So. Just so that you're clear.
I mean, basically, what you're talking about is a sonic wake, and you're just not going to get that in space. But it's probably moving some particles around, but it's just nothing. It's not. You're never going to be able to hear it unless you've got some, Star Trek type instruments on Earth. Yeah, I mean. This is BFI. I was saying it's like technology from the future. About 2050. That's about the period you'd expect this ballistic transfer. It's just so way future, because if you have a supersonic aircraft going through the air, you're continually expending energy just to ram the air out the way, because it can't get out the way fast enough, and that's what causes the boom. But if you have a BFR, all you've got to do is get into space, and you can just cruise there. You don't have to have any thrust whatsoever. They might have a little bit of thrust on the ballistic transits, because if you think about it, they'll take off. You'll have some relatively high G, maybe up to 1.3 G or even more than that, and then you'll have a period of 0 G. A lot of people are just going to want to unbuckle and just float, find out what it is, and then the last 5 minutes, could you please find your seat again? So that's 500 people, with the bottoms in each other's faces, trying to get back to what is my seat number? That's mine, So I think they're going to buckle them in, and they're probably going to keep a little bit of thrust running all the time, so they've got a little bit of acceleration, which it has the effect of gravity. Otherwise, things could get really. People are not trained for space; they don't know how to do 0 G combat or manoeuvring or whatever they end up doing. So I think they'll just buckle them in and keep a little bit of thrust going. That's my perspective, anyway.
That was all.
Hello.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you're fine.
We hit a moment of awkward silence. Welcome to the awkward part of the show.
I wonder how...
Was it the bottoms in the face expression? I knew I went too far there.
I wonder how loud a BFR is going to be. Because I know out at Vandenberg, you can be 15, even 20, 25 miles away from a launch and still able to hear it really easily. I remember even the lead up to the first Delta IV Heavy flight out of Vandenberg, they had to do studies to make sure that the acoustics actually wouldn't affect Lompoc out there, to make sure they wouldn't wreck anything.
Well, the sound will also be dictated by the marine layer and the cloud cover, will it not? Like at Vandenberg, you're going to have a really low cloud layer that a really low and thick cloud layer that the engine noise could potentially bounce right back off of.
Yeah, that was something they had to think about. They also had to think about if it goes boom too.
Oh, sure.
All of those very energetic noise all of a sudden. Yeah, there were some questions about that. So
I remember the last space shuttle STS-135. It was, I believe, the lowest cloud deck they had ever launched through, which was amazing and awful at the same time. Because it was amazing because we had covered.
Was it 35?
I think it was 135.
Yeah, 135 was the final one. It was overcast.
No. I know it was the final one.
I'm near positive it was 135 because all the media was there, and like there were all of those tents. And we saw.
But for 35, we were right next to the tweet up tent.
Right.
I think it was 34 or 33. They were next to. It was a foreign news entity, and we watched all of the things flutter.
I'm near positive that was 135.
I don't think it was.
I'm near positive it was 135.
So Doka in the chat room has an answer for you, Jared.
Which is
loud as Falcon.
So it was 135, and it was because all the media was there, and that's why all of the different.
I don't think it was.
Okay, so
I believe you, but I don't think it was.
But all right, I can probably prove this to you.
Okay.
Oh boy, here we go.
Just
even if Ben is right, we're not going to bring it up on the screen. So.
Oh, well, we can't, so it doesn't matter.
So, the sonic wave of...
No, we were just... so the whole point of that was we were mentioning how different the sound from that one shuttle launch was. Because
the sound
we had
bounced
seen...
off the clouds.
Right, we had seen so many shuttle launches before that. We had covered them, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, this one shuttle launch, we were like, whoa, holy cat! And like you could see the sound waves, like you said, hitting the tent and just like rattling through the tent. It was incredible.
Well, that happened when I was at the second Iridium flight for SpaceX out of Vandenberg. The winds were blowing offshore, and the sound was significantly reduced from that. It was probably the quietest launch I've ever been to.
Yes,
I could literally talk like this and have drowned out the sound. And then you go back to the third Iridium flight just a couple weeks ago that we were at, and it was all kinds of loud as heck.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think 134 was your low cloud deck.
I'm looking at pictures of 135, and it was definitely a low cloud deck on 135.
That's cool. I don't think it was 35. I'm near positive it wasn't.
Well, 133 was clear as day.
All right,
I remember that.
Then it might have been 134, but I really don't think it was 35.
The reason I think it's 135 is because I remember thinking to myself, because it was the shuttle went whoop, right into the clouds.
That was 134.
Thank you. I really don't think it was 35.
So let me just jump on.
Because that would mean your parents were there. I don't think it was. I don't
Jump
think
on
it was
this
that one. I think that was the
vidcast
last
channel
one.
and check.
I think that was the last one that we saw Astrogurley on site, possibly, and or Flying Jenny. Like there were a couple of space tweets that we had seen for 32 a long time ago, and then there was the last time we saw them on
134. Right here.
I mean, hard to say.
Yeah, but I need to see it after it launched.
9, 8, 7.
Yeah, 35 was almost a weather scrub. Yeah, that's way too clear. I think it was 34.
The final liftoff of Atlantis on the shoulders of the space shuttle. America will continue the dream.
I mean, we're
not really
already
on the shoulders of the space shuttle, because the space shuttle program was over at that point. That's a terrible way to.
Now controlling the flight of Atlantis.
Yeah, you might be right, because that seems like it's way too high. We wouldn't have been. Well, they went on board. All right, let's look at 134. See 134. I mean, tracking should lose it, or they'd have to go on board. Oh, hey, look, my own coverage.
Hey, weird, our own coverage. I can't imagine. That seems really strange.
Oh
Why
my
would
God,
we
why
ever
didn't I
want
edit
to do
this down? What
that?
was I thinking?
Good God, yeah. Why didn't you edit that down?
7, 6.
You can see the...
Yeah, you can see the thought process. Ben.
0 and liftoff for the final launch of Endeavour.
Is that actual
Expanding our knowledge,
velocity and everything on there, by the way?
Ish.
Gotcha. Close enough.
Here's a photo from 134 from the press area.
Well, they both went... And then they went on board. They both did the same thing, so hard to say. Yeah, okay, show me 135. Work, Dodo, work! Here's the other problem, is like, we're like, oh, hey, all the tents, because it wasn't just the tweet up tent, it was the media tents. Those tents were there for 135.
Yeah, but we had a tent for 35 and we did not for 34, and I would...
Ready?
Yeah,
Ready?
yeah.
Well, that kind of only sort of helps me. Go back. Go back. That doesn't really... I wish we had one that
Really?
was at the same...
That doesn't really?
No, they're not at the same... No, it doesn't.
They're very similar perspectives, man. 135 had a kind of a overcast thing. There was clouds up high, but the ceiling on 134 was much lower.
All right. It was 134 or 135. How about that? We spent way too much time on
I
this.
got a perspective for you guys. Memory tends to make up its own story. You have the facts, and then your memory sort of makes up a story about what happens, and that's not always... Well, it's...
I just make my own stuff up regardless.
Sort of form.
All right. I was kicked out of the chat room. Let's see here. Yeah, we were so stable last week. This week, not as much.
Not so much.
Nope. Let's see if I can get in. Are we winding down?
It was 1:30. Ben is wrong.
It was 1:30?
It was 1:30. Ben is
Sorry.
Wait, I don't think we were at 130.
Yeah, I don't think we were either.
Yeah.
As a joke, 1-30-Ben- is wrong.
Oh, y'all.
That's
All right.
dedication.
I can't get into the chat room anymore, so we're done with that. And any final comments, guys? Are we done? We wrapping?
I think I'm good.
Oh, my chat room died.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll leave us on. I'm wearing bright purple. I'm testing out.
Yeah, it's definitely, that's way too off to the side.
Yeah, so, right. So I'm testing out shirts for use in the swag store. The logo is going to be made a little bit smaller, not a lot, just a little bit smaller, and pulled way over because it's too far off the side. So I've got another new batch coming. These are all long-sleeved because the cold season is coming, so I figured long-sleeved. By the time we're ready to deploy, it'll be November, December. But I also am looking at short-sleeved shirts as well. Sleeved, yeah. You never heard me say that? The chat. Why? Not that I can look at the chat room, but they're kind of like, "What is going on?"
They also don't want you to look at the chat room, by the way. They're talking about you now that you can't see.
I hate them so much. It's archived, people. I can go back and look at the chat room archives.
But he doesn't. so
Winter
it's
is
okay.
coming. Winter is coming. All right. On that note, I think we're done. Chris, thank you so much for taking. Do you want to pimp your book really quick? I know it's on Amazon or whatnot.
Enjoyed
But
it. Oh, you're embarrassing me. You're making me commercial. I don't know. It's just called. It's called SpaceX from the ground up. It's the 4th edition you're looking for on Amazon. All right. It's only 3rd edition at the moment as a paper product. So you really want to get it on Amazon to get the up-to-date stuff. Okay, that's it. That's all I want to say.
Well, yeah. Wait. Hang on. Here's a question for you. When did the 1st edition come out?
Okay, it came out. It was like 1st of April, I think it was, around there in 2016. It was basically just a lead-in. People like screaming, want to know what was going to happen at the IAC 2016. So I'd done quite a bit of research and worked out the finances. So I thought, I'd put it together as a book and show people what to expect. And we had a few surprises, but that's good. And it's funny because it seemed that whole IAC 2016 was most of it was for NASA's benefit. They got in the seniors. They showed them the presentation before the show and said, "Whoa, isn't this good?" And NASA's like, "Whoa, how much payload to Mars? 450 tons, 100 people. We're not, maybe in 100 years we might need something like that." But now, and I said in the book, well, they could possibly do this themselves. They have the finances, and it seems that's what they defaulted to now. They say, okay, well, if NASA's not going to come in on it just yet, I'm sure there will be at one point or other, then we'll just carry on with our financial plan, putting commercial satellites up there, helping anybody who wants to launch, and put it together ourselves. So it's all golden, basically. But that was 18 months ago, and I'm on my 4th edition now, because the new stuff just keeps coming. It's not like looking at like an old a legacy launch provider where they're trying to keep it more the same than the last launch than every other launch. Every time it's just like there's something new happening at SpaceX. They're really pushing the limits.
So now your next challenge, I want you to write a book about Blue Origin, because it's so hard to get information out of there.
Information.
It's hard.
Impossible.
I know.
Maybe I could hack them via Amazon. I don't know.
All right. I also
Okay.
it's a little incredible that you've had 4 editions in 18 months. That's kind of that's abnormal. That's unheard of.
That's also dedication to making sure you got it right, and that's great. So
when is the 5th edition coming out?
Well, I've actually been thinking there's a few things, but I errated them during the week just to make it, copacetic. But next IAC, I'd say, because he always likes to give you an update. I mean, things just keep changing around. I love it. It's good. But I was researching SpaceX just for my own, for my own interest for like years before I wrote the book. So I could basically write that book in 10 weeks because I already had all the information available. Well, I thought I had until I tried to find the references, and Googling stuff, finding all those old references is just like impossible. So, but I got there in the end, 10 weeks. It was a good job.
All right.
But now I've done another 18 months. Oh, dear. Yeah.
All right, so I think we missed that in the main show, so we'll make sure to add a link to that in the description of the show notes for the show itself.
So
yep.
Yeah, people can look at it because I go into a lot more detail. I strip down their finances, show exactly how much they're going to be making this year in the long run, how it all factors together, the alternate contingency funding plans, and of course everything that happens on Mars, how it's going to be phased. I mean, the interesting thing is that in my first book, I sort of pointed out the fact that they've got a little bit of a problem. If they send one ship to Mars, well, if anything happens on that ship, then the ship is actually more important than individuals on board, because it's like an old-time sailing ship. If the ship sinks, everybody dies, so you're in a position where people have to sort of sacrifice themselves to keep the ship in one piece. So, but that's not right. These people are invaluable. That you're never going to get a replacement. These are very highly skilled engineers. So now in this IAC presentation, they say, well, we're going to send 2 ships, so they have options now. It's good, and also hopefully they'll be able to sort of push out one of their emergency shelters as well, a geodesic dome, something like that. So it's good, and they're going for the self-funding, so they have final say on everything that goes on the ship. They don't have like where the shuttle had, where they had the Air Force saying, well, we're going to have this capability, and NASA saying, oh, right, well, we'd have all these nested, so many committees. The first committee would be what sort of refreshments and biscuits we've got to have for the second committee, stuff like that. No, they're just a bunch of engineers get together, say, what do we need? All right, we'll do this. All right, this is the best way forward. So is that a question? Yeah, it's good.
Well,
it's Kindle.
I was going to say, Last question for the show is the book available on Kindle? But I assume so because it's on Amazon.
Yeah, I think if you have Kindle Prime, you get it for free. But even if you haven't got a Kindle reader, I believe there's an app you can download so you can read it on your PC or laptop or whatever you use, basically. So I have to pay for the book, of course, but I'm working on that.
All right, I think that's our show. I'd like to thank Chris. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday. We'll get this posted in the next 24, 48 hours, and I'll let you know when it goes online. I appreciate the really rapid turnaround for coming on the show this week. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
I love talking about SpaceX. It's my favourite subject. So, just glad you could have me. It's really been fun. Although, next time, Space Mike, he managed to evade my questioning there. I don't know.
All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching online. Have a good one. I'm excited for next week's show. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.